Welcome to the stream.
One more thing to show you before you move on. Now hover over the first block, hold L1, then step of the staircase to be. There, right in front of the door. You can keep pressing left to create more steps, or right to remove them. How you position the first clone will affect all the repeated clones. Rotating the clones, for example, will let you build ramps and spirals.
What? How's he doing that?
And if you scale the clone, clear for Connie, switch over to play mode to test the scene. Get Connie to the final platform, and if you rotate to place it in the scene.
Where's the other one? Oh my god.
You can create incredible shapes with repeat cloning, so feel free to experiment. How you position the first clone will affect all the repeated clones. Rotating the clones, for example, will let you build ramps and spirals.
I don't get it.
And if you scale the clone with the up button, you can create a sequence that increases in size. So try different approaches and see what you can come up with.
Oh, look at that!
If the path is clear for Connie, switch over to play mode to test the scene. Get Connie to the work.
OMG, that looks so weird. Finally, the man stopped talking. Started broadcasting on YouTube.
I broadcasted on YouTube. You wanted to watch it?
Were you connected to
Yeah. Oh, I listen.
Yeah.
But what I'm doing is a tutorial, learning like the movements and shit like that, and how to move things. And another tip I tell you is when you start it, it's going to give you an option in your preferences for motion control or sticks. Use the sticks.
Welcome to part 4 of our Start Dreaming tutorial. Ah, I see Cuthbert has managed to get himself in a pickle again. Connie, how do you put up with him? What a spanner. But with Connie's help, we can rescue him. This time around, I'll show you how to select and group your creations and how to scope in and out of groups. Luckily, someone left behind a block for us to use. Remember how to repeat clone blocks to create a bridge? Well, let's do that again.
I do.
Move your view side on to the block and the gap. Hold L1, then grab the block with R2.
Jeez.
Move it with the motion sensor function to create a clone. Just like last time, let go of L1 while still holding R2, then press the directional buttons to make more clones.
Yeah, we've done that.
If you rotate the first block a little before you clone it, you can make an arch. Use L2 to make the first block angle up slightly, then make the clone angle down. Press the left directional button to repeat clone, and the clones will line up to make an arch. Amazing,
Just a
right?
guy the other day do this, and he was
Let's quickly test that in play mode.
He couldn't do it.
Looks great. Switch back to edit mode, rewind time, and go to the next
so
step of the
complex,
tutorial.
So much to it. It's harder than
not that
even
one,
I
the
thought
next
it
one
was
along.
going to be.
What?
Because you can't get it in that one.
I was wondering if I'm struggling.
How do I move
What's the
it?
plan?
Yeah, and yeah, see, and he couldn't figure that shit
Well
out.
done.
Bow.
No, it's good.
Okay.
Now, You probably noticed that all the blocks, the original as well as its clones, were selected automatically after cloning. You can tell when things are selected because they have an animated dashed outline. But after we switched between play and edit modes, everything was deselected. So let's select them again. Can you see how each block has its own outline, with a double line where they meet? That's because they're still individual elements. You can deselect them one at a time with X, but it's much quicker if you deselect them all at once with circle. Give it a try. There's also a faster way of selecting multiple objects. Just select one as before, but this time keep X held down. Now move your in to select the others.
Yeah, because they always come on my phone.
Better than selecting one at a time, right? So much faster. The great thing about having multiple objects selected is that you can manipulate them as if they were one object. For example, if all the blocks are selected, you can clone the bridge sideways to create a double bridge. Plenty of room for Connie to cross it without falling off the edge. Try it in play mode.
Hold on. Still trying to work with
Once
this
Connie is across the gap, go back to edit mode and move on to the
Maybe I
next
should
step.
invert it. That might be my problem, you know. Let me invert the camera. See if that makes any... No, it doesn't. It's a bit easier.
Where are your headphones?
Next door, on the floor.
So if we select it all, and then you hold L1, clone that.
But they can't hear me because no one's watching.
Just come on.
Yeah, like two.
Yeah, well, still.
Don't hate.
Yeah, like two.
Hey.
Well, that looks good.
Okay.
You need to move them back over though.
Hold L1. Yeah, that's the R, but I'll select the whole thing. Hey, we're getting there. We're learning.
That one on the right's a bit high at the bottom. No?
I don't care. What like, I'm not gonna be perfect. I'm just learning the copying and all this shit. Now, man, in the tutorial, like, you gotta do it all yourself. It teaches you shit, yeah, and it'll show you it, and then you gotta do it. Right. Yeah, oh, bruv, yeah, ain't no 10-minute thing, fam. Yeah, it's not no. Yeah, nah, bruv, it's not. Yeah, bruv, so it's a hella work. Hella work. Webb's
You
come
know,
around last night, fam,
This
stayed.
bridge would be
And
really
he tried
useful
to, I
help
said to him,
Connie
yeah,
cross to the next platform.
try to play it, bruv.
Use X to
And
select
after about
all
10
the
minutes,
blocks
he was
again.
like, bruv, that's just too much.
If we're going to use this bridge a lot, we can make it into a group.
There is a lot of them.
That way, it will behave like a single element,
Oh, we
and
missed
you
one
won't
at
have
the
to
end
keep
there.
selecting all the blocks. Have you noticed the menu at the side of the screen? It appears
Did you guess my head?
when you have one or more objects selected. That's the context menu. The options it gives you will depend on the situation you're in. In this case, all the buttons relate to selected objects. Look for the plus sign. That's the icon for the
Look, I've
group
just
button.
missed everything he
The
said.
number next to it tells you how many objects you've selected. Options it gives you that way. You know, this bridge would be really useful to help Connie cross to the next platform. Use X to select all the blocks again. If we're going to use this bridge a lot, we can make it into a group. That way, it will behave like a single element, and you won't have to keep selecting all the blocks. Have you noticed the menu at the side of the screen? It appears when you have one or more objects selected.
Okay.
That's the context, that's the icon for the group button. The number next to it tells you how many objects you've selected. You can use this button now to turn all of those blocks into a group.
Ah.
There we
Makes
go.
it one
The
item
bridge is now a
instead of
single
loads.
element. You can tell because it has one outline around it instead of one around each block.
Nothing.
And if you look over at the context menu, you'll see the group button now says ungroup. Use it if you want to break a group up. But we still need it to help Connie. So let's clone this bridge and place it between the second and third platforms. Just like before, hold L1 and grab the bridge with R2 to clone it. As always, remember to let go of L1.
Yeah.
We don't need to test the bridge to see that it's not going to get Connie to the third platform. But don't worry, we'll fix that in the next step when you're ready to move on.
Next step. Let's go.
Our bridge needs a bit of work if it's going to reach the next platform. This is the perfect opportunity to learn a new technique, scoping in. Scoping in means you can jump into a group and edit the contents individually without having to ungroup it first. And since you can only edit things inside the group, you don't have to worry about messing up anything outside it. Let's give it a try now. Select the bridge with X if it isn't already selected. Then find the Scope In button near the bottom of the context menu. Notice that it's showing you a shortcut for it, L1 and X. So hover over the bridge group, hold L1 and press X. Now you're scoped in. We can now edit all the parts as if it wasn't a group.
Ah.
If you want to really focus on just the group, you can hide everything else in the scene.
Yeah, fair. I can fix that now.
Just use the Hide Everything Else button in the context menu. The icon looks like a closed eye. There's also a Scope Out button in the top right corner. This is how you exit groups. Try scoping out now. Select the button with X or use the shortcut, L1 and circle. That's it. Now scope back in again so we can fix the bridge. Just hover over it, hold L1 and press X.
I'm lost. Rewind. Let's start.
Our bridge needs a bit of work if it's going to reach the next platform.
I'm lost.
This is the perfect opportunity to learn a new technique, scoping in. Scoping in means you can jump into a group and edit the contents individually without having to ungroup it first. And since you can only edit things inside the group, you don't have to worry about messing up anything outside it. Let's give it a try now. Select the bridge with X if it isn't already selected. Then find the Scope In button near the bottom of the context menu. Notice that it's showing you a shortcut for it, L1 and X. So hover over the bridge group, hold L1 and press X. Now you're scoped in. We can now edit all the parts as if it wasn't a group. If you want to really focus on just the group, you can hide everything else in the scene. Just use the Hide Everything Else button in the context menu. The icon looks like a closed eye. There's also a scope out button in the top right corner. This is how you exit groups. Try scoping out now. Select the button with X or use the shortcut, L1 and circle. That's it. Now scope back in again so we can fix the bridge. Just hover over it, hold L1 and press X. I think what Connie needs to reach the next platform is a staircase. So use the move and clone tools to create a new one.
You want me to delete the bridge now and make a staircase, yeah? So what's the point in all of that madness? You just zoom out, I need to zoom out, that's it. I don't know, fam. Do you know what the first thing I want to do is actually make a character and get it animated. Do you know what it says? I want to make a character and learn the animation
Once
of
you've
it.
built the staircase, test it out in play mode to make sure Connie can...
Let's delete all of them except that one. Let's grab this, rotate it. Rotate it now. Now we're making a staircase, so we're going to do the movement of it is fucking weird, bruv. Like camera angles and shit. It's so odd. That's up and down. Okay. Select one thing. I'm after one thing. Yeah, group them. Yes. Whoa. Got it on smash. One fucking staircase. Start into play mode. Is this that play? Yes, but
make it across. When you're happy with it, switch back to edit mode, rewind time and move on to the final step of this tutorial. Is your staircase working? Fantastic. Now Connie just needs a bit more help to save poor old Cuthbert from his predicament. Luckily, you can clone your staircase group to reach the final platform. Use the clone shortcut L1 and R2 to copy the staircase group to the last platform. Don't forget to let go of L1 once the clone has been created. That's how useful groups are. If you select the group, you'll see a button in the context menu that saves the group as a new element. Saving a group as a new element means you can use it in other scenes or share it in the Dreamiverse. You can't do that in tutorials, but you can everywhere else. Now that you've mastered selecting and grouping, I'll leave you with a thought to ponder. You can also make a group inside a group. With that, I'll let you experiment. Once you're happy that you've mastered selecting, grouping and scoping, you have just one thing left to do. Go into play mode and take Connie and Cuthbert.
I'm getting hungry in that. It's a real thing, you know. I'm terrible for it. Group that, have it, clone it, slap that, there to get out there, bang, start, into play mode, adjust the pocket, upstairs, yay. That's got the hang of the shapes and shit and manoeuvring them in there. Yes, the animation I'm very interested in. Some of the shit I've seen on it is sick, fam. Like the Barbara Tunde game is hard. Code style, action, position, recording, logic, assemble a level, sound design, sculpting, how to make a forest, connected with physics, character art, painting, arranging music. Fam, there's just so much, and that's just one. That what you just heard was just one category. There's about 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 categories full of tutorials. It's fucking mad. Your master classes, isn't it? Animation, that's what I want to learn, is this animation. Who's that ringing? Ah, that's me, give me that, give me that. Sorry bro, I'm on set, bro. Yo. Yo, you en route? I'm ringing now, it's only the one, so. I'll do cool. Oh, sorry, fam. As if he don't laugh, he's gonna cry. Action and possession, keyframes and time. Let's have a ganders.
It looks like Cuthbert is in a spot of bother. Connie needs our help to get across these platforms so she can rescue Cuthbert. So how about we add a little handmade animation together there? You don't need to go into play mode to see that Connie won't be able to make this jump. So let's animate that floating ledge down to her using an action recorder. Action recorders are super easy to use. Just stamp one in your scene and it will record anything you move with the imp. And we mean anything. It'll even record you moving or tweaking gadgets. We'd better get going. Connie's getting really impatient. You know what cones are like. Go to the assembly menu. Press the square button if it's not already open. Then head to the animate menu. The animate icon is a clapperboard. That thing they use in movies before the director says, action. Now you get to be the director.
Wow,
and you can use these...
Start that again.
It looks like Cuthbert is in a spot of bother.
Yep.
Connie needs our help to get across these platforms so she can rescue Cuthbert. So how about we add a little handmade animation?
Yeah, go on.
together?
If it rings, let me know, yeah?
You don't need to go into play mode to see that Connie won't be able to make this jump. So let's animate that floating ledge down to her using an action recorder.
Okay.
Action recorders are super easy to use.
Yeah,
Just stand one in your scene and it will record anything you move with the imp. And we mean anything. It'll even record you moving or tweaking gadgets. We'd better get going. Connie's getting really impatient. You know what cones are like. Bored. That thing they use in movies before the director says, action. Now you get to be the director, and you can use these tools and gadgets to animate objects. Select the action recorder, the icon with a film strip and a plus sign on it.
Yeah.
You'll now have an action recorder gadget on your imp. Stamp it down, somewhere near the floating ledge.
Okay.
A progress bar will appear at the top of the screen, along with a record button on the right. Also, your imp will turn red. This means you're ready to start recording. Don't worry, recording won't start until you begin moving or changing things. When you're ready, grab the floating ledge with R2. Move it slowly towards Connie using the motion sensor function or the sticks. You'll notice that the bar starts to fill, recording your every move. Don't worry, it's not a time limit. The bar fills up as a visual indicator of something being recorded, so take your time.
No, I don't
When
know
you let
that.
go of
But
R2, the recording will pause.
hey, nah, this is
If you
fucking
move your
actually
view
sick,
or use
bruv.
the grab cam, that won't be recorded.
How they've actually done this.
But if you've started time with
It's
R3,
amazing.
recording will continue when you let go of R2. That's why it's important to rewind or pause time before recording anything. That way, your action recorder only contains what you put into it. When you've finished recording, select the Stop Recording button in the context menu. Or you can use the shortcut, L1 and circle button to exit the
Yeah,
action recorder.
okay.
Your imp will go back to normal to show that recording has stopped. Click R3 to play back your animation.
R3.
Handmade animations are always a bit wobbly, but practice makes perfect.
They got me
Calibrating
moving
your imp
platforms
can help
and that.
when using the motion sensor function. Just hold your controller in a comfortable position, then hold the options button for a few seconds. In the next step, I'll show you how to edit a recorded animation. Anything you record is stored in the action recorder gadget.
Okay.
If you hover over the floating ledge, the action recorder will pulse. Select the action recorder with X, and dashed lines will appear on the objects animated with it. It'll also show the animation path. That's this dashed line. If you're not happy with your animation, redoing it is easy. First, rewind time with L3. Then hover over the action recorder gadget, hold L1 and press X. Now we can start recording again. Select the retake button in the context menu to replace the old animation.
Okay.
Now you can record a new one. Move the platform so it stops in front of Connie. You can undo actions you perform using the left directional button, but it won't undo any time that has passed.
Yeah, that's alright.
So it's better to use the retake button to undo animations.
So let's try that.
Move the floating leg from the upper platform down to Connie. Don't worry if the animation's too slow or too fast. We can fix that later. Make sure you press the stop recording button when you're done. Spend a little time practicing the action. In the next step, I'll show you how to tweak your animation.
I was happy with that.
Another way to edit animations is to tweak them. Hold L1 and press the square button over the action recorder gadget to open its tweak menu. Here you can see all the tweaks for the action recorder.
No, I didn't get that.
By default, the playback mode is set to loop, so it plays the animation over and over
Let's
again.
go back. I
But you can set
didn't catch that.
another way to edit animations is to tweak them. Hold L1 and press the square button over the action recorder gadget to open its tweak menu. Here you can see all the tweaks for the action recorder. By default, the playback mode is set to loop, so it plays the animation over and over again. But you can set them to play once, sustain, or to ping pong. Once will play the whole animation just one time. Sustain will play the animation for as long as the action recorder has power. If it loses power, it will stop. Then it will continue from that point when it's powered again. Ping pong plays the animation forward once, and then plays it in reverse. Then forward, then backwards, and so on. That sounds like a good option for our floating ledge. Select ping pong with X. Click R3 to start time and play the animation. You can also change the animation speed to make it slower or faster. Grab the slider with X and use your IMP to change the speed. If you want to explore more of the action recorder tweaks, you can. If you hover over any button for a few seconds, a more info tip will explain what that tweak does. To close the tweak menu, just hold L1 and press the circle button anywhere over it. And of course, you can undo any changes you make by pressing the left directional button. Switch to play mode to test your changes. When you're ready, come back to edit mode and start the next step.
Okay, that's that done.
Now that Connie's made it up to the higher platform, how will she get back down to the next one?
How do I play?
First, rewind time with L3. You probably already know about cloning objects, but do you know that you can clone their animations along with them? I'm sure you remember how to clone, but if not, just hold L1 and grab the ledge you animated with R2. Once you've made the clone, release L1, then move the ledge to the other side and release R2 to place it. Not only did you clone the ledge, but you also cloned its animation. Click R3 to start time. Now we just need to flip it so that it moves in the correct direction.
Okay.
First, make sure you rewind time. Grab the platform with R2. Then click L3 to flip it horizontally. Depending on where you grabbed it, you might have to move it closer to the other platform after flipping. You may also need to realign it with the triangle before releasing R2 to put it back down. Now click R3 to start time, and the platform should move in opposite directions.
Jesus.
Both animations are stored in the same action recorder. So if you retake or delete the action recorder, it will affect both animations. Now go into play mode and see if Connie can make it across both gaps. Switch back to edit mode when you're ready to move on. Now let's get Connie to Cuthbert and get them through the door. I've placed a shiny helper cube. Let's call it Cuthbot. That holds up the next platform, but it's not very animated at the moment. To get it to walk back and forth towards the exit, we need to use Record Possession. It allows you to possess puppets and record a performance with them. Open the Assembly menu, then go to the Animate menu.
Animate.
Select Record Possession. It's the button with the sock puppet icon.
Yeah.
Your imp can now possess the puppets in the scene. In the Context menu, you'll see the Counting button. When this is selected, you'll get a 3-second countdown before recording starts. Press R2 over the Cuthbot to possess the puppet and start the countdown. When the count reaches 0, the possession recorder begins recording. Unlike the action recorder, it records constantly. So time will be recorded even when the cube isn't moving. Walk the Cuthbot around the obstacles to the final platform. Pause for a moment, turn around, then walk back to where the Cuthbot started. Starting and ending at the same place will help to make the animation loop smoothly. Press the circle button to depossess. You'll notice that the recording pauses when you depossess. Select Stop Recording in the Context menu to exit the possession recorder. Once you've stopped recording, click L3 to rewind time, then R3 to start time, and watch what you've recorded.
Rewind time.
In the last step, I'll show you how to edit the recorded possession.
Okay, now that's a move shit.
You may have noticed a possession recorder gadget has appeared next to the Cuthbot. When you're using Record Possession, this gadget appears the moment you press the Stop Recording button. Select it with X to view the animation path. The Possession Recorder gadget also lets you edit and tweak the animation. Hold L1 and press X over the Possession Recorder to scope in and edit it. Just like the action recorder, you can choose to retake the animation by selecting the button in the Context menu. To stop editing the possession recorder, select Stop Recording in the Context menu. Or hold L1 and press the circle button to quickly scope out. You can also tweak the possession recorder with L1 and the square button. It has exactly the same options as the action recorder. Experiment with the recorder and the different tweak options. Remember, you can see more info about the tweak settings by hovering over them for a few seconds. Close the tweak menu by pressing L1 and the circle button anywhere over it. Once you're done editing, switch over to play mode to test out the completed scene. Then Connie can navigate to the last platform and help Cuthbert through the door to complete the tutorial. You might be able to animate wobbly platforms with the action recorder, but keyframes are where animation gets serious. Nice try, Cuthbert, but leave the dream shaping to the experts. We're going to use keyframes to animate the platforms so Connie can reach the exit. A keyframe records any changes you make to an object, such as its position, tweak menu settings, or anything else you can think of. Then it stores those changes in a gadget that you can switch on and off. Okay, let's use keyframes to help Connie get across those platforms. First, go to the assembly menu. If it's closed, press the square button to open it. Look for the animate button, which has a clappable board icon, and click on that. Start by selecting the keyframe gadget, which is the one with the diamond and the plus sign. Then stamp it in the scene above the first gap. You'll notice there's now a stop recording button in the context menu, and your imp now looks like a red keyframe. That means the keyframe gadget is recording any changes you make in the scene. But unlike the action recorder, it only records the state of things, not a period of time. It's probably easier to understand if we put it into practice. Let's try it on the block that's on the ground in front of Connie. Grab it with R2 and place it between the first two platforms. You'll see some dashed lines appear on the block. These tell you that the keyframe has recorded the change you've made to the object. You can move it as many times as you like. It'll only store the final result. If that's not the outcome you wanted, you can always undo your last change with the left directional button. The next bit is super important. To finish and store your changes in the keyframe, you need to select the Stop Recording button in the context menu. Select it now and see what happens. You might be able to animate wobbly platforms with the action recorder, but keyframes are where Connie menu. If it's closed, icon sign. Then stamp it in the scene above the first gap. You'll notice there's now a stop recording button in the context menu, and your imp now looks like a red keyframe. That means the keyframe gadget is recording any changes you make in the scene. But unlike the action recorder, it only records the state of things, not a period of time. It's probably easier to understand if we put it into practice. Let's try it on the block that's on the ground in front of Connie. Grab it with R2 and place it between the first two platforms. You'll see some dashed lines appear on the block. These tell you that the keyframe has recorded the change you've made to the object. You can move it as many times as you like. It'll only store the final result. If that's not the outcome you wanted, you can always undo your last change with the left directional button. The next bit is super important. To finish and store your changes in the keyframe, you need to select the Stop Recording button in the context menu. Select it now and see what happens. That's right. The block has snapped back to its original position. That's because the keyframe isn't active right now. But we can still see what's recorded by selecting the gadget with X. There, the block is back to where you moved it. You'll notice the keyframe doesn't record how things moved, just where they moved to. Make sure you deselect the keyframe before moving on. You can do that by pressing the circle button. In the next step, I'll show you how to use your keyframe in the scene. Back to where you moved it. You'll notice the keyframe doesn't record how things moved, just where they moved to. Make sure you deselect the keyframe before moving on. You can do that by pressing the circle button. In the next step, I'll show you how to use. Now that you've recorded a keyframe, let's look at how to activate it. See the trigger zone above the first platform? Select it with X to check its area of effect. OK, it looks like the zone stretches across the whole gap. Deselect it with the circle button. Then use the sticks or the grab cam. So selected zone's first platform. Select it with X to check its area of effect. OK, it looks like the zone stretches across the whole gap. Deselect it with the circle button. Then use the sticks or the grab cam to move in closer to the gadget. You'll notice an out. output port on its side, labelled Detected. This sends a signal when it detects a possessed puppet like Connie. The phone stretches across the whole gap. Deselect it with the circle button. Then use the sticks or the grab cam to move in closer to the gadget. You'll notice an output port on its side, labelled Detected. This sends a signal when it detects a possessed puppet like Connie. We need to connect this to the keyframe, so select the port with R2 or X to create a wire. Then stretch it to the keyframe gadget with your IMP and use R2 or X to connect the wire to the power port. Now the trigger zone signal will switch on the keyframe when it detects Connie. Try it out in play mode. Just press the options button and select the controller icon. See? As soon as Connie enters the trigger zone area, the block springs into place. Well, it works okay, but the animation's a bit fast, don't you think? We can do something about that after you take Connie across. Head back into edit mode. Rewind time with L. L3, and I'll show you how to add smoothing to the keyframe in the next step. Okay then, we've made a simple keyframe animation. Now it's time to smooth it out and make it look better. Like almost everything in Dreams, keyframes can be tweaked. So open this one's tweak menu, hold L1, then press the square button over it. You'll see two sliders at the bottom, slow power up and slow power down. These determine how long it takes for the keyframe to turn on fully. Hover over the slow power up slider now and hold X. Then move your IMP to the right to increase the value. Let's set it to 1 second for now. You can set slow power down to any value you like. Then close the tweak menu by selecting the cross icon in the corner. Or you can hold L1 over the menu, then press the circle button. Let's see what that looks like in play mode. Ah yes, that looks a lot smoother. If you're happy with the new animation, switch back to edit mode. Rewind time with L3 and move on to the next step. It looks like the bridge across the next gap has collapsed. We could just move it back into place, but where's the fun in that? Let's perform a little bit of magic instead. Go to the Assembly menu and select another keyframe from the Animate menu. Stamp it above the gap with R2 or X. Now see if you can reassemble the bridge. Grab the first part and move it back where it should be. One of the great things about keyframes is that they can affect multiple objects. So you can put the other half of the bridge back too. Then select Stop Recording from the Context menu to store your changes. Once recording stops, the bridge will go back to its original position. So, select the keyframe with X if you want to see those changes again. I could have done a better job at positioning the bridge. Nothing to worry about though, because editing a keyframe is easy. Just select the Edit Keyframe button in the Context menu. It's got the same icon as a keyframe gadget. This allows you to make changes to the keyframe. You can remove things from a keyframe by pressing the triangle button over them. And now the bridges are back on the ground. Let's put them back into place, but this time, make sure they're a bit straighter. Remember, when you're grabbing things, you can realign them by pressing the triangle button. There we go. Much better. You can select Stop Recording again to finish editing this keyframe. Then move on to the next step when your bridge is in place. The bridge's new position is already stored in the keyframe, so all we need now is a way to activate it. That's where this trigger zone will come in handy. Let's select it to see what zone it covers. It's not in the gap this time. It's over this button. First, create a wire from the trigger zone's output using R2 or X. Then stretch it over to the keyframe and connect it to its power port. When Connie steps on the button now, the keyframe will be switched on. But what happens when she leaves the trigger zone? Let's test it in play mode to find out. Just as I thought. When Connie moves away, the keyframe switches off. Let's head back to edit mode and see what we can do about that. Of course, we could just move the trigger zone into the gap, but this is an animation tutorial. So let's see if we can use the keyframe's tweak menu to fix the problem. Open it now with the L1 and square button shortcut and have a look at the options there. Hovering over the buttons will bring up their names. The one we're interested in is called Keep Changes. With this option turned on, any changes made by the animation will be permanent. So once Connie activates the keyframe, the bridge will stay in its new position until you rewind the scene. Since we're already in the tweak menu, Let's add some smoothing to that animation. I think I'll set it to... With this option, hovering over the buttons will bring up their names. Hovering over just move the trigger zone into the gap, but this is an animation tutorial. So let's see if we can use the keyframes tweak menu to fix the problem. Open it now with the L1 and square button shortcut and have a look at the options there. Hovering over the buttons will bring up their names. The one we're interested in is called Keep Changes. With this option turned on, any changes made by the animation will be permanent. So once Connie activates the keyframe, the bridge will stay in its new position until you rewind the scene. Since we're already in the tweak menu, let's add some smoothing to that animation. I think I'll set it to 2 seconds this time. OK, time to close the tweak menu with L1 and the circle button. Then try out these changes in play mode. How's that for a magic trick? You can switch back to edit. Keyframes are great for making simple animations. But if you want to make something more complex, you need a timeline. See that little block floating between the last two platforms? Let's use keyframes on a timeline to animate it. Start by selecting a timeline from the Animate menu. Stamp it down somewhere around the last gap. Then you can use the circle button to unequip the gadget. Now open the timeline, hold L1 over it and press X. This is the timeline canvas. You can move the canvas with your imp by grabbing it with R2. The numbers along the top are seconds, and you can see it set to 8 seconds by default. If you grab the edges with X, you can extend or shorten the canvas. Try setting it to around 6 seconds. If you ever need extra space to add more things, you can also extend the bottom of the timeline. Once you're comfortable with moving and resizing the timeline canvas, move on to the next step and we'll start adding things to it. Now, it's time to animate the floating block. Cuthbert's waiting. Once the block's in place, remember to press the Stop Recording button in the context menu. Now, grab the keyframe gadget and move it over the timeline. The gadget will snap to it. Place it at the very start of the timeline. Then get another keyframe from the Animate menu. We'll use this one to record the block's second position. This time, stamp the keyframe directly onto the timeline. Around the 2-second mark is good, on the same row as the first keyframe. Move the floating block to the opposite side of the gap. Now stop recording. Hover over the timeline canvas and play controls will appear. Using these controls, you can preview just the timeline without playing the rest of the scene. Select the play button to preview your animation. As you can see, gadgets are only active when the timeline's playhead is over them. So, when neither of the keyframes are switched on, the block goes right back to its original position. Now we need to edit the animation so the first keyframe blends into the second. To do that, open the first keyframe's tweak menu with L1 and the square button. Now that the keyframe is on a timeline, the buttons that were grayed out before are available. These are blend types, and they change how one keyframe merges into the next. Select the linear button, which will blend to the next keyframe at a constant speed. If you press the timeline's play button now, you'll see the platform move smoothly between the keyframed positions. Feel free to try out other blend types and see how they affect the animation. Then move on to the next step when you're ready. We've got the platform moving smoothly now, but we can still improve how it works. Let's begin by making it pause for a moment at the start and finish, so Connie has an easier time getting on. All we have to do is scale the keyframes on the timeline, so they last longer. You might want to get up close to the first keyframe before we start. Now, with your imp over the keyframe, hold the up directional button to extend it. Then do the same with the second keyframe. Now that the keyframes are longer, the blend has become quicker. You can see it for yourself by selecting the play button under the timeline. If you want to scale a keyframe more precisely, you can do that with its trim handles. Trim handles are the dotted lines at the beginning and end of keyframes. Grab them now with R2 to give it a try. We should get the platform back to where it started now, but instead of adding a new keyframe, we're going to clone the first one. You remember how to clone things, right? Just hold L1 and grab the first keyframe with R2. Now drag it past the second keyframe and place it by releasing R2. Now we just need to add the blending between the last two keyframes. Only this time, we'll use a shortcut instead of the tweak menu. Just hover over the space between those keyframes, then hold L1 and press X. There you go, one linear blend added. You can even cycle through different blend types by keeping L1 held and pressing X again. I love shortcuts, because I'm lazy. Use the play controls on the timeline to preview the animation. Move on to the final step when you're ready to continue. Now, because there's some space at the end of the timeline where none of the keyframes are active, the platform just snaps right back to its original position. There's a few ways we could fix this. For example, we could shorten the timeline so there's no gap at the end. We could also lengthen the keyframe animation so it fills up the whole timeline. Or we could turn on Keep Changes in the last keyframe's tweak menu. The last step is tweaking the timeline itself. So, hold L1 anywhere over it, then press the square button to see all of its properties. The playback speed makes it go faster or slower. But what we're interested in right now is the playback mode. When it's set to once, the whole timeline will play, even if it was only powered for a split second. When it's set to sustain, it will only play when it has constant power. It will stop when it loses power, then resume from that point if it's turned on again. And if it's set to loop, it will repeat over and over as long as it has power. That sounds like the best option for this timeline, so select that one. Okay, it looks like we're good to go. You can close the timeline now by selecting the cross icon in the top right corner. Or you can hold L1 over the timeline itself, then press the circle button. Click L3 to rewind time and test out your changes in play mode. Once you're happy with everything, exit through the door to complete this tutorial.